Hey everybody, David Art Becker here with Becker Art, and today I want to tell you to stop taping down your watercolor paper. Why am I telling you that? It's because if you're using 140-pound paper and you tape down your paper to the board, it is going to wrinkle like crazy on you. It's going to give you a wave like you wouldn't believe. And so let me just show you how to avoid that and not have to buy any tape or anything like that. And here we go. So if you're using 140-pound, now if it's 300-pound, you don't have to worry about that. You can tape it down. But also, remember I was telling you about not using glass and mat board? And so you need to make your paper 11 by 14 instead of 11 by 15 if you cut it in quarter sheets, and also make it standard size, right? And so if you tape it, a lot of times it takes away that inch or whatever, half an inch. And so if you need to, tape it to those standard size, then that's okay. I go ahead and tape it, and also make sure it's 300-pound, because that's gonna, if it's not 300-pound, it's gonna wrinkle like crazy. And let me just show you to show you how much it does wrinkle. And so I'm just going to take some dirty water here, and this part is taped and this part will not be, and I'll show you how to then use it. And I'm using a board, one of those boards that the political signs are made on. You can use plexiglass, you can use gator board, but anything that will be, when I wet this later on, I'll show you, I'll be wetting it, and it'll stay nice and flat, right? And so, but what happens when you tape it is that it expands. And so if you're doing a big wash, let's say you're doing a big wash of a sky, and I'm just gonna really wet it a lot, and maybe because I made it this small, this paper, half, it maybe won't wrinkle as much, but it probably will. And then, because I'm gonna make it really wet. And what's happening right now while it's wet, it's going to start expanding. It's going to be really wavy. And this is what happens with all newcomers and beginners. They put on there and they get a nice white edge and stuff. And it looks all great when you're done, but while you're working, it just gets wrinkled. And actually, I'm not sure, you can't tell yet, but let me just put some, let me put some pigment on so you can kind of tell. So let's say, what happens is that it's going to start waving, and you can see right here it's starting to wave, and it'll puddle in these that bottom part of the wave. It'll start puddling there, and so it's not a good thing. And it's really tough to keep your paper nice and fluid then, and but not have it puddle up in areas where there's a top part. It's definitely not, the water's not going to stay on top of the image. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this sideways. If I turn it sideways, if you can see it all. No, it's going to be kind of hard to see. Let me go closer up. But it just take. Oh, there you can see. You can take my word. It is starting to buckle. It'll start buckling and wrinkling, and no fun. It's no fun when you have it wrinkling. And I'm just going to keep it going with some water, so you'll see how it will. All the water will end up in the middle. Of the paper, and it's really, really wet. But when I work wet in the wet, you need to have it wet for a long time, because you have to spend some time. And there's nothing more frustrating when my students are working it really wet and they're just getting it nice, but then all of a sudden you get the wave of the paper. And it will happen because the back side of the paper is dry, the front side is really wet, and I've got tape on it so that it can't expand. All right, and so let me just again put some more pigment in here so you can see how it's going to be floating towards the middle here. This is the top. There's two little bumps right now, and it's hard to see this with the camera because I can't turn it sideways completely. And but you'll see when everything starts puddling in the middle, and see how right there's the lower part, and this is the top part. So you'll see a top part that's going to be a little bit lighter than the bottom part, because that's going to absorb all the water into the middle of the paper, right? So how do you avoid that? And using 140 and even thinner paper is you wet the paper. You wet the paper on the back. Don't tape it down. It'll stick to the board or whatever you're doing, plexiglass or gator board. If you're using some of the wood paneling, then you may want to cover it with a coat of like a shiny paint, like a house paint that's maybe even semi-gloss or glossy, so that it will rest on there and give you a nice smooth surface. because you kind of want a smooth surface. This is not as great because it does have those little indents throughout the whole thing, but it will still, it's wet. So I'm just going to spray the board itself. I'm going to take my mister. I'm just going to spray the board. I'm going to spray the back of the paper and the front. Now, if you're going to want to keep the front of the paper dry, and it'll still expand, but it will go upwards. It will kind of like do one of these things where it'll go up like that. But I just sprayed both sides. I'm just going to lay it down. Now look at how flat that is. And the front side is also wet, but I can wet this now just as much as this paper, and it will not wrinkle. It will not wrinkle at all. And make sure that it is, there's no bubbles underneath, like there's no air pockets underneath where you're going to get a little bit of the air pockets there. So like what I do here, and now it's stuck on there actually kind of. And I look on the back and it's really wet, and that's what I want. I want it really wet. Now again, like I said, if you're doing a piece of paper and it is dry on the front and wet on the back, it will buckle this way. It will buckle in like this, and the sides will stand up. Just leave them stand up. They'll go down, and eventually they'll come down because they're just kind of soaking through in the back, and it will just slowly but surely kind of go down to flat. But now when I'm doing this, look at it, I can. It's not gonna have a little bit of the, like here you can see the water is like puddling right here and there. It's puddling, and so it's bringing all the pigment to the center of the wrinkle. You know, it's nothing more terrible than working in a wrinkled sheet of paper. It's not professional. You cannot do anything when the paper is wrinkled like that. And I have so many of my students work with that, and really don't do it. You don't need to. Just do that, and you can go right to the edge. You can take the same color, go right to the edge, and look at how it's not going to puddle in any area. I may get a little bit of this, the lines from my paneling, from the panel that I have, the plastic panel I have underneath there. That's the time I really suggest plexiglass. Get yourself a sheet of plexiglass and just wet the back of your paper. And this is all for thin paper, 140 pound, 90 pound paper. You know, use it on those type of papers that are thinner. At 300 pound, don't worry about it. You can tape it down if you want, but I even, with my 300 pound, I like to wet the back and then just lay it on there so it doesn't move around. I don't want a white line anymore because I'm working to a standard size frame. Remember, we're working to a standard size frame so that you don't have to add matte and glass. You know, so that's how come I now go right to the edge. Because if I have to measure with the tape to get the exactly 11 by 14 or whatever, I'm never going to do that. It's always one of those things. You say in good intentions that you're going to do it, but you never do. And so you'll have this beautiful white edge around it, but it will not be standard size. And then you also get it wrinkling, you know, especially if you're using 140. Again, if you're using 300 pound, forget I said this because that's thick enough that it won't wrinkle. It wrinkles a little bit, but not enough to make it like this, where there's still a puddle. And if you can see how there's a puddle. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, see right there. See how the lighting is wrinkled. So that's wrinkled, and that's horrible to work with. This now, look at how nice and even all this is, and then it's easier for you to get, you know your gradations and stuff. And here I can put a nice gradation in here. I don't have to worry about too much water in one area because right now the water is all collecting on the bottom of the paper. You know, and even if I take it out, it's still the top of this is going to go down into that paper. It's going to drip down into the pocket of that well. You know, and this is the top part and this is the bottom part. You know, maybe that you want to do that for an abstract or something, but not for if you want to really take your time and get a really nice, beautiful wash and let your pigment float. Because there's more water in the middle, and on the top there's no water at all. So you can't get a nice, smooth, even wash like you could when this side is all wet. Wet on the back side. And look at, if I hold it up, it's not going to come off. Nothing comes off. It's just like a tape. I can tape make it upside down, and it's not coming off. It will not come off. And look at the wrinkle in there. See the wrinkle? The wrinkle is horrible. So don't tape your 140 down. All right. It's just one of those things I see, and I really, especially now with trying to always have my students work to standard sizes, that's what you do. You just put it on there and get yourself a piece of plexiglass, and it'll all be good, right? Don't tape your paper down. 140. All right. Thanks a lot. We'll see you on Thursday. And if you are working on 140, I don't want to see any tape on there. All right. Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye bye.